Good evening, people, and welcome to ETV Bharat. Today, we delve into a pressing issue that affects us all, the future of the oil and gas industry amid the global energy transition. With us is Narendra Taneja, a leading expert. A very warm welcome, Mr. Taneja, on ETV.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So, can you provide an overview of the key challenges the oil and gas industry is facing in terms of energy transitions, and what are the primary factors driving these changes?
Well, when you look at the energy transition, as you know, that which basically means that, bulk of our energy is traditional energy, that is oil and gas and coal. And when you talk of energy transition, that means moving away from fossil fuels to renewable energy. That is energy transition. And when you look at, for instance, the overall landscape in India, we have been putting hell of a lot of efforts to move in that direction. In fact, we have achieved a lot. When you look at the renewable landscape of India, India is among the top, performers on solar power. And the same goes more or less for wind. And now we are moving into offshore wind, just basically having wind farms on ocean, like on the east coast and the west coast and other parts of the country. So that's what energy transition means. But at the same time, given our requirement for energy in India, we need every single source of energy you can think of. We need more oil, we need more natural gas, we need more coal, because 81% of our total energy is still coming from fossil fuels. That is oil, gas, and coal. Bulk of our electricity is still generated using coal, for instance. So therefore, we need both. At the same time, since we are a very densely populated country, and we have set a national target in terms of net zero by 2070, with milestones like 2030, 2050, and so on. So therefore, we are also investing heavily in renewable energy, most particularly solar power. But not only solar, we are going for hydrogen, we are going for nuclear, and we are going for other sources of renewable energy too. That's all part of the energy transition. But since we are one of the fastest growing economies in the world, consumption of energy is very high. We are among the top 4 energy consumers in the world. We are the third largest consumer, of oil, for instance. We are the third largest generator of electricity in the world. So therefore, you see, looking at the size of the country, looking at the size of population, and the fact that, we are among the top 4 economies in the world, therefore, the consumption of energy is very, very high. So we need to mobilize as much energy we can in terms of, number one, affordability, and number B is, of course, availability. So when you have to address all these issues for individuals as for industrial consumers, the task is huge. But if you look at what India has been able to achieve, I think it's tremendous, mobilizing sufficient energy for all sectors of economy at the same time for practically every household. So I think we have come a very, very long way, but there are still challenges. Challenges more because our dependence on imports is very high. Whether it's for oil, it's roughly 88%. We depend on imports. When it comes to natural gas, it's in the region of 54%. When it comes to solar power, we are doing very well, but we depend on imports for panels and, cells and all that, roughly in the region of about 75 to 80%. We import from other countries. So our dependence on imports is very, very high. Now the government declared agenda is very clear that we want to achieve energy independence by 2047. That's the time when India will be celebrating 100 years of independence. So that's the target. When we celebrate 100 years of our political independence, we should also be celebrating, the beginning of India's energy independence. It's a very ambitious target, but it looks like if we can get there in terms of hydrogen, nuclear power, solar, and other sources of renewable, I think we should be able to achieve it.
So, Mr. Taneja, as we navigate the possibility of rising petrol prices in India, how do you think this will impact the average consumer, especially given our reliance on imported fuels?
Well, when we talk of the prices, of course, that's a different domain altogether. When you look at the ground reality today, what's happening in the Middle East in terms of, war between Israel and Iran on the one hand, and Israeli operations against Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. So overall, the Middle East situation is very, very tense. And why Middle East becomes important? Because we import bulk of our oil and gas from the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, and Iraq, and of course other countries in that part of the world. So that's the challenge. Challenge is not so much only sourcing oil or gas from that geography. Challenge is bigger because whenever there is a kind of escalation that we are witnessing in the Middle East the last couple of weeks, the oil prices go up. So our challenge is not so much availability of oil. The challenge is the price. I mean, we import oil roughly from 40 countries around the world, including the United States and Russia, Africa, Latin America, Brunei, and so many other geographies. So availability of oil, I don't think that we'll face much challenges. The challenge for us is the price, because India is an oil economy by and large, and our consumers are extremely sensitive to price, be it the LPG cylinder or petrol or diesel or turbine fuel, which is used by aeroplanes. So I think our challenge is basically there. So far we have seen escalation in the in the Middle East between Iran and Israel in particular. So that has resulted into oil prices going up, the crude oil prices. If you look at the oil prices today, they are in the region of about $79 to $80 per barrel. And the most of it is because of the geopolitical premium. If there was no war, there was no escalation, oil prices probably would have been in the region of $65 per barrel. That would have been a very good situation for us. So we are paying this heavy geopolitical premium because of the war situation in the Middle East. And it has to be passed on to the consumer, whether you are an individual consumer or you are an industrial consumer. So therefore, our worry is basically price and not so much the availability. I think since our sourcing of crude oil is very diversified, we import from number of geographies, so that's not the worry. But the price is the worry. If there is escalation in terms of war between Israel and Iran in particular, I think that will be a very, very disrupting situation, because then the oil prices can go up further. And if there is a kind of attack by Israel on oil and gas installations of Iran, then I think oil prices can go up maybe $10 or $20 per barrel almost overnight. And if Iran in turn decides to hit back at oil and gas installation in countries which are friendly to Israel or which are perceived to be friendly to the United States and the West, then the situation can get even worse. Then the oil prices can go up further. So that's very difficult to predict what's going to happen tomorrow. But if we look at the landscape today, the scenario today, prices are pretty high in the region of $80 per barrel. And don't be surprised if they go further. But if there is a kind of ceasefire or the geopolitical situation eases a little bit, then I think the oil prices will start coming down and maybe go down to $70 per barrel, maybe even $65 per barrel. If you look at the demand and supply of oil globally, there is no shortage of supply. There's plenty of oil available, and the demand is not increasing anywhere in the world. So therefore, the oil prices actually will go down to even $60 per barrel if there is no war, if there is no geopolitical tension. But if there is a geopolitical tension and it escalates further, prices will go further. There are two things which basically determine the price of oil. Number one is, of course, demand and supply, as everybody knows. So on that front, there is no worry. There's plenty of oil available and the demand is not going up. But the geopolitics is another area which affects the price of oil almost every day. So the volatility that you see today is because of geopolitical situation in the Middle East.
Transitioning towards renewable energy is crucial. What role do you see these sources is in elevating pressure on oil and gas? Are there specific technology that stand out for this?
Well, transitioning away from oil and gas and coal, of course, is the agenda of the Indian government, for that matter, practically every government on the planet. But the question that is easier said than done. I mean, look at, for instance, India's overall landscape in terms of transport. I mean, we are heavily dependent on petrol and diesel for whether you are a heavy truck or you're a motorcycle or you are a car. In some cases, you have your lorries or your ships or you are, other kind of vehicles and vessels that you see around the country. Of course, we are now trying to move to electricity, but that transition is going to take decades, very long time. And the second question will also be, where is that electricity is going to come from? Bulk of electricity is coming from fossil fuel, that coal, roughly 67%. Then we also use electricity, use diesel to produce captive power, that is, through generators. So I think that technology is available. We have got a very ambitious renewable agenda. But if we think that, the renewable energy will replace traditional energy is oil, gas, and coal. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. That is not the scenario, unfortunately, we are into. What we are into is basically that we need more of traditional energy because we are a fast growing economy. We need to eradicate, poverty. We need to create more employment. So our situation is like this, that we need more of oil, we need more of gas, and we need more of coal. At the same time, we need more renewable energy. We need more solar. We need more wind energy. We need more nuclear power. We need hydrogen whenever it becomes commercially viable and available. So for us, it's not this that renewable energy will replace. That might happen maybe in decades to come, maybe 2050, 2060. But I think for the next 20 years, when we look at the picture, we are going to, it's going to be basically lots and lots and lots of traditional energy, oil, gas, and coal, and at the same time, more and more of renewable energy. We need both. If you think that renewable energy will replace traditional energy, and that's going to happen in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, I think we are dreaming. We can do that if we compromise with the development of the country. But we are not going to do that. No country can afford to do that. So we need to develop. If we want to develop at 9% per annum GDP, then I think we will need to consume more energy. How can we do that? In India, we have millions of people who are below energy poverty line. So people in big cities like us, we live with all the comforts of AC and all that. We have plenty of people who don't have access to even refrigerator. Forget about air conditioner. So we need to provide energy to all of them too, because they're also Indians. Now, in order for that, we need more of both traditional energy and renewable. For us, the luxury, some people talk about renewable is going to replace traditional in 5 years, 6 years. I think that's all daydreaming. That's not reality. We can do that if we cut off, if we deny energy to majority of people and restrict it to not to a limited number of people. So that will be a kind of energy apartheid. So that's out of question in democracy like us. And our government is very clear. Government wants to mobilize energy for every single Indian. And for that, we need to develop more traditional energy, more oil, more gas, more coal. At the same time, more of renewable energy, solar, hydrogen, and everything. But renewable replacing traditional energy overnight or anytime soon, I think that's not happening.
So, in light of these changes, what type of investments and innovations are essential for the oil and gas industry to navigate this transition successfully? And how can companies balance traditional operations with new energy initiatives?
Well, very good question. You see, that's the challenge we are facing. And my own sense is that what we basically need is that our oil and gas companies, when you look at India, among the top 10 companies, 5 countries are basically oil and gas companies. 5, the top 10, including the private sector. So what we need is basically all these big oil and gas companies and coal companies to also start investing heavily in renewable energy. So they become integrated energy players. That means they are in fossil fuels, but in traditional energy, but they are also in the renewable energy. So that, because they have capital, they have experience, they have reach, and they can mobilize technology and they can bring in new practices. So I think that's what we need. So we can't think in terms of that, look, you are traditional energy, so you sit in this box, you're renewable energy, you sit in this box. It's not going to work. We need to work together. So therefore, I think, we have expertise available. We have management expertise available. We have a kind of, capital available domestically, plenty of it. And if we need further, we can also bring in from wherever available. But I think what we need to do is that all these companies like Indian Oil, ONGC, Bharat Petroleum, Coal India, they all have to transition and being transformed to integrated energy companies with a big kind of footprint in the renewable energy. At the same time, the company which are in renewable energy, they need to invest more in other sources of renewable energy, such as hydrogen. So that's what we need, basically. We need both of them. And we need to incentivize and invest in both of them, because that's what we need. A country that's home to 1.4 billion people. We need every single source of energy. What we cannot afford is We cannot afford this debate that only renewable and no traditional. Those who talk and think about that, I think they are probably cut off from the ground reality. So therefore, we need both. We cannot have this debate in India that renewable replacing this and all that. No, we need for next 25 years, we need both traditional as well as renewable. And we need the best technology for oil and gas. We need the latest technology for coal so that we can use coal in such a way so the contamination of air and water and earth is minimum. At the same time, we need more technology, better technology, so that we can go deep into the ocean, ultra deep water in the Andaman and Nicobar, in the Bay of Bengal, in the Arabian Sea, in Kerala Konkan, so that we can bring that oil which is down there under the sea to our consumers, to our market, so that we can reduce our dependence on imports. At the same time, we need to set up more factories. We, in fact, are already setting up 2 gigafactories for making solar power cells and panels and so on, so that our dependence on China in particular will come down, very dramatically very soon. So that's already something in the work. But we need 2 more such factories so that we can reduce our dependence to almost zero, and not only we can become an export hub to other developing countries. So, and we also at the same time we need to build at least 3 or 4 more mega refineries for oil, so that we can not only be oil available for our domestic consumer, we can also export it, because we are a major oil exporting country in terms of products. We bring crude oil, refine it, and we export. So we need to come down, and we have a very special status globally on that. In order to maintain that, we need to set up more refineries. So we need to think in a more integrated manner, not think in this way that we need only this and that. We need everything, every single source of energy, so that every single Indian, rich or poor, living in distant areas or living in big cities, they have access to amount of energy that they need, so that they can enjoy the same quality of comfort that people in big cities like Delhi and Bombay have. Is in a democratic society, it's not fair that people in big cities have access to all the comfort, while people living in far-flung areas, they don't have access to those. We need to make sure that every single Indian, wherever you live in the country, you have access to the same amount of energy that's available to people in the big cities.
Also, what role does government regulation play in this energy transition? Are there any specific policies that you believe are vital for guiding the industry toward a sustainable future?
Well, you see, the government is, we are signatory to the international protocols, including Paris Accord. And so we are very much, the government basically is coming out with new policy frameworks, and at the same time, policy infrastructure involving various state governments, so that we can move in that direction. So we are moving. So in terms of the government policy infrastructure, that's ready, available. That's already being implemented. And at the same time, the central government is also engaging other state government, because renewable energy in particular, they are going to play a much bigger role, the state governments. So both the central government and the state governments are more or less on the same page. And there are constant dialogues going on between the center and the states, in order so that there is a kind of, the whole thing is done in a more cohesive manner. And the results are kind of, faster for every part of the country. But that said, at the same time, you see, energy transition is a very clear agenda. Energy transition is happening all over the world. But what is important is that for us, we Indians, look at energy transition in an Indian way, because energy transition in India it has to happen with Indian characteristics. We cannot copy the West. The Western countries are putting a lot of pressure on us. They want energy transition in India to happen in a particular way, the way they are doing it. So which basically means that we import more technology from them, we import more capital from them. We have to be very clear about it. Energy transition in India will happen the way India needs, the way India can afford. With Indian characteristics, it's going to take a long time. It's going to be with Indian characteristics. We need to mobilize to the extent possible our own resources, be it finance, be it technology, be it practices. And therefore, it is important that if there is a pressure from the world outside, we say no to it very firmly. And many of us who are not in the government, in media and think tanks and all that, we have to remember, we have to work for Indian interests. If there is a pressure, we should not be borrowing these ideas from them. What is clean energy? What is sustainable energy? Good luck to them. Those definitions are there. Good luck to them. Keep them. But we are going to develop our own definitions of sustainable energy, sustainable life. We don't need to learn from anybody, not from the West. In India, we have lived in harmony with nature for thousands of years. We know that. We worship trees, we worship nature, we worship rivers, we worship mountains. Why do we need to look up to them for inspiration? So we don't need to do that. So what is sustainable development? We have to come up with our own definition, our own delivery based on our definition and our circumstances, our history, our civilization, our knowledge, and our requirements. But unfortunately, many of people in media and think tanks, university, they're just copying the West. They take cut and paste and they want to implement it here. This is extremely unfortunate. We don't need to do that. We should be proud of what we have accumulated over the thousands of years, and we should develop this model of sustainable development, which is 100% Indian, based in Indian realities, based with Indian roots and with Indian characteristics.
So, Mr. Taneja, consumer awareness is also key in this transition. How important is it, and what steps should consumers take to prepare for potential fluctuations in fuel prices and energy sources? And I also want you to shed more light on how do global market dynamics, particularly geopolitical tensions like the Russia-Ukraine or Iran-Israel wars, exacerbate the challenges faced by the oil and gas sector.
Well, when it comes to global oil prices, as I said, that globally oil prices are basically decided by only two major factors. Number one is demand and supply, and it's an international pricing. It doesn't matter. You may be producing your own oil, but but prices are determined based on dollars, the international prices. So benchmarking is global. So therefore, so on the two, demand and supply, and number two is geopolitics. That's what basically go into what how the oil prices are decided the world over. So on demand and supply, luckily situation is in India's favor because there is no disruption. There's plenty of supply available, and demand is not growing. Actually, we are driving the demand. India is among the places where the demand is actually going up. China is in a very bad state. Demand is actually going down in China, which is the second largest market for oil. And the situation in other parts of the world is not that attractive. So therefore, on that front, luckily, we are doing very well. But geopolitical situation, you mentioned Ukraine. When Ukraine happened, the prices have gone up. And, we had started importing more from Russia because they offered us a better deal. It's all about economics. We buy from Russia because they offered us a better deal. And the same goes for if there are other countries which offer us good deals, we'll go and buy from them. It's the end of the day, it's all about economics. So, but as far as the consumers are concerned, I think consumers need to understand one simple thing. The 88% of oil that we put on our tank, whether it's LPG cylinder, or it's your motorcycle, or it's your car, or it's your truck, is imported. We have to keep that in mind. And both the central government and the state government, they both impose heavy taxes on that. Center in terms of excise and the state government in terms of VAT and sales, etc. They're both heavy taxes. So whatever you pay on a petrol pump to buy 1 liter of petrol, 50% of that is actually tax going to both central government and the state government. And no political party can say, we are above this thing. We are not. Every political party, there's power in the state or in the center, they have not done much about. So we need some rationalization of taxes, bring oil and gas under GST probably. But otherwise, the consumer needs to understand it's an imported commodity. When the prices go up globally, you have no option but to pay more. And the second thing is that conserve oil wherever you can, conserve energy wherever you can, conserve electricity wherever you can. If you're not driving, you're just sitting on a red light, turn off your engine, maintain your vehicle well. Remember, every time you drive your car for 10 kilometers, you are consuming something which is very expensive. And we pay through dollars. We pay in dollars to import that. So just keep in that mind. So that energy is a very, very, expensive source. Therefore, keep in mind and use energy, but use it as prudently as you can.
Finally, looking ahead, how do you envision the future landscape of the oil and gas industry in India, and what changes should be anticipated over the next decade?
Well, there are two quick answers to that. Number one is I hope that the government has come out with a very attractive exploration production policy, which means the government is incentivizing domestic exploration production so that we can produce more gas, within our own territory. And there are scientists, geologists, they say we have more gas in the Andaman Nicobar. There may be more oil actually on the east coast, of Andhra Pradesh and some other areas. So I think we should invest more in that, and we should try to attract more investment into that area. Secondly, I think, what we need to do is to kind of incentivize more renewable energy, especially solar, make solar a kind of grassroots revolution so that people participate. For that, whatever incentives we need to give, whatever training we need to give, we should be doing that. But I think if you look at the overall direction, India is doing reasonably well and moving pretty well in that direction. Some state governments need to do a little bit more. And I think we need more education and training in terms of that. How do we go about, let's say, to buy a panel, to have it on a roof? What is economics? How does it actually work? Some more training. Maybe we bring in more young men and young women in rural areas to participate in the solar power revolution. And we need to go for more grassroots revolution. And we need to empower our panchayats more in terms of so that they can set up their own solar power plants in the cheapest possible way. There's a lot that we can do, but I think there's a lot already happening. So I'm pretty positive, but let's not forget one thing, that if we want to, be a $30 trillion economy, we want a job for everybody, and we want to make India a developed country by 2047, we cannot get there without energy. We need to mobilize energy first, and affordable energy, and at the same time, easy access to energy for every single Indian.
So thank you, Mr. Taneja, for
Thank
joining
you.
us on ETV. It was pleasure having your insights.
Thank you very much.